What I am talking about in today's video is not a conspiracy theory, it's simply a fact. The NBA was rigged from the years 1949 to 1965, and this rigging is what got players like Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, and Oscar Robertson a lot of their success. And the craziest part of it all is the fact that the NBA has made no effort to try to cover this up. It's just that people don't talk about it. So today, we're going to change that. Before we get into it though, just please be sure to subscribe. We got some big things coming and you're gonna want to be one of the first to witness the rise of this channel. We got big things coming, I'm going all in, and with that, let's hop straight into this story. In the NBA's earliest days, the league was really struggling to gain an audience. There were many other competing leagues and they had yet to emerge as the top dog that we all know them as today. So basketball fans were split. Some were watching one league, others were watching another league, and there were just less basketball fans to begin with, regardless of the amount of leagues. So to set the NBA apart, then Commissioner Maurice Padloff decided to rig things to ensure that teams located in the big cities would always have the best teams. And he did this through the implementation of something called the territorial pick. The new rule allowed for teams to sacrifice their first pick and in return select a player that attended a college located within a 50-mile radius of their team before the draft even began. This meant that the team with the first pick wasn't getting their first choice. Players would already be off the board before the draft even began because of these territorial picks. The issue with this is the fact that more densely populated areas usually have more schools. Think about it. Instead of a struggling team desperate for a star player getting the first pick, you'd have teams like the Lakers and Celtics, who already had legit superstars and were legit super teams getting the best guys year after year, and there was no way to stop it. Any great player from Villanova, Temple, LaSalle, or the University of Philadelphia instantly went to the Warriors. Back in the day, the University of Minnesota was a very prestigious basketball organization, and any great player from over there instantly became a Laker. When the Lakers moved to LA, they got first dibs on players from UCLA and many other colleges around that area. Anybody from Princeton instantly became a Knick, and anybody from the University of Michigan instantly became a Piston. I think you get the point. This is an awful rule. The worst part of it all was the sheer unfairness. There was never any big-time prospect that teams like the Bullets, the Stags, the Olympians, the Jets, the Blackhawks, the Redskins, or the Packers could ever get their hands on, simply because not enough major schools were located near them. You might notice that you had no idea that most of these small market teams ever even existed, and that's for a reason. Remember, the NBA was struggling for money, so when a team is bad and can't get better without lucking out on getting a gem late in the draft, they're going to go out of business. This rule, point blank, straight up killed countless teams. Get a load of this. In the year 1950, the NBA had 17 teams, and they were looking to expand on that number. But by the year 1965, the final year of this rule being in place, there were only 9 teams. Somehow, the NBA's team count went down, and pretty drastically at that. You really never see that happen all too much unless there's some outside force or incredibly stupid rule forcing teams to foreclose. That's exactly what's happening here. Now, I'm not going to blame some teams going out of business completely on this rule, but come on, it had to have contributed. If there is a rule in place that makes it literally impossible to be good if you have a small market, that small market is going to fail, especially in a time where they didn't have money to lose. Now let's talk about the players and just how much this rule has affected the careers and the legacies of the greatest players of this era. In 1949, the Lakers snatched Hall of Famer Vern Mickelson with a territorial pick. The Lakers would then win 5 championships, with Mickelson serving as their second best player, only behind George Mikan. Reminder, they should have never had Mickelson Mickelson in the first place. Meanwhile, the actual worst team in the NBA, and the team that actually was given the first pick, now couldn't even take the first best player. That team would be the Providence Steamrollers, and they would foreclose in the next year when Mickelson could have easily saved this team. In 1950, the Philadelphia Warriors selected Paul Arizin with a territorial pick, and he was probably literally the best player of his generation. He was a 10-time All-Star, 2-time scoring leader, and brought a championship to Philly in 1956. Again, he should have never been on the team in the first place. The Warriors were especially infamous with these territorial picks. In 1955, they took their longtime starting shooting guard in Tom Gola. The team would then win the championship this year, meaning that 2/5 of their championship starting lineup was there on the team only because they went to a college near Philadelphia. That's just stupid. In 1958, Philly took 4-time All-Star and Hall of Famer Guy Rodgers with yet another territorial pick, and in 1959 took Wilt Chamberlain with another. This team would make it to the finals in 1964, but we have to acknowledge that Tom Gola, Guy Rodgers, and even Wilt himself, literally a majority of their starting lineup was on the team because of the location of their college. Let me repeat, a majority of a finals team's starting lineup was on the team because they happened to go to some college near Philadelphia. The Celtics also got Tom Heinsohn with a territorial pick, a selection that greatly benefited the legacy of Bill Russell. Let's be real, people don't care about any players from the 60s other than Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain, and a lot of their popularity comes from the fact that they won a lot. But the core that their teams built around them were built so successfully because they could just draft players before the draft. Imagine if someone like Wilt, instead of going to the Warriors, went to somewhere like the Anderson Packers. He would have been screwed. Oh yeah, I forgot. The Anderson Packers were out of the NBA by the time Wilt was drafted because the NBA had stupid rules like this that forced them to go bankrupt. Later on down the line, Hall of Fame talents like Oscar Robertson, Dave DeBusschere, Jerry Lucas, Bill Bradley, and Gail Goodrich were all brought to their teams via territorial picks. Who knows what happens to any of them if they didn't have the privilege of instantly being on really good teams. I could tell you that things probably wouldn't have gone as smoothly for any of them. Does New York win 2 rings without Bill Bradley in the picture? Oscar Robertson and Jerry Lucas played 7 seasons together on the Royals, and neither should have been on the team in the first place. So what does this team look like if those two never got there? There's just so many questions. NBA history is just completely different without the presence of territorial picks. Wilt never becomes a Warrior, Oscar Robertson never becomes a Royal, George Mikan never meets up with his Robin and is instead forced to try to carry a considerably worse team, and Bill Russell suffers the same fate, losing a massive piece of Boston's core in Tom Heinsohn. So when you see teams like the Lakers and Celtics dominating the early eras of basketball, ask yourself about what happened to all the other teams. Really question if these two teams became so great because of fantastic management or because they had a massive advantage ingrained in the rulebook that caused the demise of close to half the league. Teams like the Olympians, Blackhawks, and Packers never stood a chance in a league so inherently against them. This rule helped Boston and LA soar to cultural dominance, which continues on even still to this day, while the rest of the early league was left in the dust to rot. And that is where we are going to conclude this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and just for me, why don't you check out these 2 videos that are flashing up on your screen as we speak. Thank you all for watching. Shout out to everybody currently in the live chat. You're all the best. Give yourselves a round of applause, and with that, stay safe out there.